Thanks, Alistair. Morning, everyone. Here we are back at Ages again. It's great to see such a fantastic turnout. We haven't quite hit last year's record numbers, but we've got nearly 300 people here. So thanks so much for making the effort to get back here to Ages again. So once again this year, I'm just going to go over, I guess, a bit of a review of the last year in exploration in the Northern Territory, some of the highlights and where we're heading for both minerals and petroleum. And as the minister mentioned, last year in the Northern Territory, we had about $176 million spent on mineral exploration in the Northern Territory. Now, this was down 23%. It came off a pretty major peak that we had in 2023, where we had $228 million spent on exploration. And unfortunately, there is a bit of a steep downward decline that occurred in the second half of 2024. And I'll talk more in a minute, I guess, about what brought that on. But well, actually, if we go to the next slide, which actually shows the expenditure by commodity, and this tells a bit of a story as to what happened last year with mineral exploration in the Territory, which is really that exploration for other minerals, as defined by the ABS, which in the Territory context is particularly lithium and rare earths, really fell off a cliff last year, just based on the collapse in prices for those commodities. So we've seen a substantial decline in exploration for critical minerals, while gold, base metals, and uranium have actually stayed pretty strong, and base metals, mainly copper, is still close to record levels, and uranium is back, which we're all very happy to see. Of course, this also reflected a bit of a downturn across Australia, although the Territory was a bit more affected, and again that was partly because the Territory had by far the highest proportion of its exploration was for those critical minerals, much more than any other jurisdiction. So we were very badly impacted by that. I would also acknowledge that in the second half of 2024 there were negative impacts from the backlog of applications for MMPs associated with the transfer of environmental regulation, and acknowledge that did impact a number of programs in the second half of next year, but I can guarantee the government's very, very committed to making sure that those processes are working for industry as we move into 2025. And if we look at the tenement situation in the Territory, we're still around 40% of the Territory is covered by exploration licenses or applications. It's still about double what it was back in 2018. So there's certainly a lot of ground taken up for exploration in the Territory. If we look at the trends of what's happened in the last couple of years, whether this works, doesn't seem to. If we look up in the Barkly tableland, there has been a bit of rationalisation of ground there after the big pickup of ground that happened sort of 4 or 5 years ago. But as I mentioned, there's still plenty of activity happening out in the Barkly tableland. But it's really Central Australia, which is very heavily pegged now, the entire Aileron province. Some of this driven by some of the success that Encounter Resources and others have had across the border in Western Australia with the carbonatite-hosted niobium, but also a lot of copper and polymetallic mineral exploration going on in Central Australia. And again, we've seen a bit of rationalisation of ground for sediment-hosted copper, but there's still a lot of ground taken up for exploration for sediment-hosted base metals across the Greater MacArthur Basin. So as the Minister mentioned, one of the real highlights of the last year, and something we're very excited about, is the revitalisation of the mining sector at Tennant Creek. And we'll be hearing, I think it's tomorrow morning, from Tennant Mining about where they're at with the development of the gold plant at Nobles Knob. But we're expecting to see the first gold poured from the Nobles Knob plant before the middle of the year. And that'll be the first major gold pour in Tennant Creek for about 20 years. And the really exciting thing, I guess, with what's going on at Tennant Creek is the pipeline of developments. Certainly, that Tennant Mining are looking at in terms of opening up a lot of the historic fields, and also a number of other very active companies that I'll talk about in a moment. In November 2024, a mid-tier South African gold miner, Pan African Resources, became the 100% owner of Tennant Mining. So it's great to see some significant capital getting in behind the ongoing development or redevelopment of the mining industry in Tennant Creek. And they've already got quite a substantial resource by putting together all of the various resources that they have across the Tennant Creek field. So I really look forward to their talk tomorrow. And Emerson Resources, of course, have a strategic alliance with Tennant Mining. And as part of that alliance, that they've been drilling in the last year at White Devil. They've actually announced a 500,000 ounce resource at White Devil just based on historic drilling. But a drilling program towards the end of last year really demonstrated the fantastic potential for further resources at White Devil, including shallow mineralisation. It's that old chestnut of building your mine infrastructure on top of an ore body. There's a lot of really high-grade shallow mineralisation just to the east of the existing pit. So an open cut resource at White Devil. I should say I was talking to Mike Dunbar. I keep confusing those two. At the drinks last night, and just talking about the fact that Emerson have actually announced 700,000 ounces of new resources over the last year. It's a pretty exciting time for Tennant Creek. And not just around these gold-only deposits. There's a fantastic potential around Tennant Creek for copper, and also for cobalt and bismuth. In the last year, CUFE Limited have announced an upgrade to the mineral resource estimate at Orlando for both copper and gold. Tennant Minerals can continue to explore their exciting Bluebird discovery out to the east of Tennant Creek, which and are moving towards being able to get a maiden resource together for that high grade copper and gold resource. CUFE Limited, Tennant Minerals, and Emerson also announced in the latter part of last year a strategic alliance to assess development options, including the potential for a multi-user processing facility for copper, gold, and critical minerals at Tennant Creek. And Tennant Mining also are looking at the potential of the Warrego copper gold resource, the remaining resource that still exists at Warrego, and are scoping adding a copper float circuit at potentially at Noble's Knob, with potential future production of about 15,000 tonnes per year of copper. So there's a lot happening with copper around Tennant Creek. And Castile Resources are also continuing their work out at Rover 1 and are looking at a refinery at Middle Arm in Darwin to process copper concentrate up there to produce copper, cobalt sulfate and gold. Initially from Rover 1, but that could potentially take feed from other sources across the territory. So hopefully we're rapidly moving towards getting copper production happening in the territory again. In the Tanami, it's a good time for gold. Was it 5,000 Aussie dollars an ounce? And Newmont just keep going from strength to strength out in the Tanami. They've announced that they added a further 500,000 ounces through exploration in 2024. I mean, they're no Emerson, but you've got to be happy with 500,000 ounces a year. Prodigy Gold had a really good year. Some really exciting intersections, and they've now got a combined Tanami North mineral resource estimate, which is all open pittable, of about 500,000 ounces. And Central Tanami are also, so that's Northern Star and Tanami Gold, their joint venture, had a very active year in exploration, really building the resource base up there for an eventual restart of, of mining. So there's a lot happening up in the Tanami. It's a really exciting area. Lithium, it was obviously a tough year for lithium in 2024. Um, as most of you would be aware, Core Lithium started or opened the territory's first lithium mine at the Bino field just near Darwin in late 2022. With the collapse in the lithium price in late 2023, they ended up suspending mining, went into care and maintenance in the middle of the year. But I guess the good news is they're continuing to, substantially increase the lithium resource in that region. There's been a 250% increase in the resource since the start of 2023. Um, they made a significant new discovery at Blackbeard last year, which looks like it'll be, has the potential to be a resource similar to BP33. And Core Lithium are very actively working on a restart strategy, which is really focused on reducing their production costs and hopefully getting back into production as soon as we see a bit of a recovery in the lithium price. So hopefully within the next couple of years, we might be back in the game with lithium mining. And there has still been a lot of activity going on for lithium in the territory, not as much as we had in previous years, but Lithium Plus have remained active in the Bino field. They've got a resource at the Lay deposit. Evergreen Lithium did a maiden drilling campaign in 2024, just close to Core Lithium. They've intersected spodumene uh, uh, pegmatites in the area, so we are going to see continuing lithium resource growth in the Bino field. iTech Minerals discovered spodumene pegmatites down in Central Australia um, in 2024 at the old Mount Stafford tin field. It's really good to actually get the demonstration of serious spodumene bearing pegmatites down in Central Australia. We've always known there's a lot of potential there. And the major Chilean lithium company, SQM, have now signed an MOU for an exploration earn-in there. So it'd be fantastic to see the lithium exploration industry kicking off more in Central Australia as well. And a private company that probably aren't on most people's radar, that went on my radar until yesterday, Larapinta Resources are investigating the potential for a lithium brine resource in the Amadeus Basin, particularly around the Palm Valley area. And they're quite confident of that based on historic data, and are looking at putting together what could be Australia's first lithium brine resource down here in Central Australia. Uranium, as I said, it's great to see uranium exploration really kicking off again. It's been, um, particularly out in Western Arnhem Land, where DevEx Resources, Alligator Energy and Deep Yellow are all actively exploring. DevEx and Alligator in particular did quite a bit of drilling last year. No major discoveries to report from last year, but there's a lot of smoke, and we just know it's a fantastic uranium province. Out in the Murphy region, we saw the first exploration that's been happening out there for a decade or so, with Laramide Resources drilling a couple of co-funded holes at Southern Comfort, DevEx flying a big airborne survey, and down in the Nalia Basin, Energy Metals did the first major exploration campaign that they've done for more than a decade, with a 11,000 meter drilling campaign that led to a resource upgrade at the Big Relay deposit. So uranium is back, and certainly we're very keen to support that. And I should also mention as well, we've seen a number of new companies moving into uranium exploration in the territory in the last year, including Boss Energy, getting into Western Arnhem Land, and Greenvale Energy taking out a lot of greenfield tenements for uranium right across the territory. Around the Pine Creek area, this is an area where NTGS are doing a lot of work at the moment, and we're really keen to kind of pick along exploration activity in the Pine Creek region. And again, this is an area that with gold at $5,000 an ounce, we need to start seeing some gold mines getting back up and running in the Pine Creek region. Petronas Resources in the past year are now fully approved for mining and a processing plant at Fountainhead and Glencoe. Agnico Eagle have undertaking ongoing exploration at Maud Creek and Pine Creek. Vista Gold announced some very positive exploration results from Mount Todd, and are currently undertaking feasibility for a smaller scale development at Mount Todd. Core Lithium had a fair bit of exploration success for gold at Shoebridge, which is not far from Cosmo. And DeSoto Resources are doing some fantastic undercover exploration for both gold and rare earths out under the Daly Basin. Unfortunately, they didn't get their drilling campaign done in late 2024, but are planning to drill in 2025. And there's also a lot going on with Primary Gold that are finalising their approvals processes for the Mount Bundy project, Bacchus Resources at Brox Creek. So there's a fair bit of momentum around gold and Pine Creek at the moment. Out on the Barclay Tableland, as many of you would remember, the Barclay Tableland was an area that really wasn't explored at all, the area between Tennant Creek and the Queensland border, until some combined work from Geoscience Australia and NTGS around 2018 to 2020 really kicked off an exploration boom in the area. As I mentioned, we've seen a bit of rationalisation of ground in the area, but there's still active exploration going on out there. South 32 drilled 3 diamond holes late in 2024. We haven't seen the results of that yet, but that was at Encounter Resources' Jessica project. Middle Island Resources drilled a couple of co-funded drill holes. The story with drilling for IOCGs out in this area has been the smoke is all there, just no one's found the discovery yet. And I think many of you would remember Astute Metals talking last year about the target that they had identified at Leichhardt East, and they drilled a 500-meter drill hole last year. Still didn't find out what that massive gravity anomaly is, so there's still more work to do there. I'd also just like to sort of acknowledge that Tech did an amazing amount of work over the last few years out in the Carrara sub-basin area, out close to the Queensland border, looking at undercover Lawn Hill platform and South Nicholson stratigraphy. They've just recently surrendered that package, but they acquired 182 kilometres of 2D seismic, which extended a lot of that Geoscience Australia seismic further south. They drilled 4 deep stratigraphic holes. They undertook MT. All of that data is now coming into the public domain, and it's a fantastic addition to our knowledge of that really poorly understood part of the world. So hopefully in a few months we'll have that core in our core store, and all of that data is open. It is already open file, so please feel free to have a look at it. Down here in Central Australia, as we've seen, it's very tightly held tenure through Central Australia. Encounter Resources, we'll be hearing from Sarah James later this morning about their exploration for sediment-hosted copper at Sandover. We're seeing a lot of juniors really getting out and having a go in Central Australia, and no one more so than Litchfield Minerals, who listed early last year and have just been seemingly continuously drilling ever since, and they had a few good results at Silver King, and we'll be hearing from them today about the work they're doing at Una Galabi. Inca Minerals had a maiden drilling campaign out in the far eastern Aileron province and intersected some copper. KGL continue to expand the high-grade resources at Jervois, and just recently released a revised feasibility study and are now in the process of raising finance. It'd be great to see an FID on Jervois. But there's a lot of other. I've just listed some of the other companies that are actively exploring in Central Australia at the moment, and we'll be hearing from some of them over the course of the next couple of days. Eastern Metals, URO Corporation, Plutonic Limited, and I'm sure anyone who's seen Chris Butera's LinkedIn posts will be looking forward to that talk. Um, I would also mention that iTech Minerals, I believe they're just starting a drilling campaign up in the Napaby area today. Is that right? Um, and So, it's great to see a lot of activity still going on here in Central Australia. Uh, was it? Also in Central Australia, Taiwan Limited have acquired a fluorite project in the Reefs area. So between Molly Hill and Jervois, there's an area of um, large quartz fluorite barite reefs that have been known about for a long time, but have just been sitting there. And Taiwan are looking to define a maiden JORC resource out there through resource drilling over the coming year. Um, at Hatches Creek, Tungsten Mining undertook a significant drilling campaign. Lots of high-grade tungsten and a bit of high-grade copper as well, and I believe they're quite close to a mineral resource estimate for tungsten at Hatches Creek, which is fantastic. And of course, Investigator Resources still continuing looking at tungsten and molybdenum at Molly Hill. Rare earths, we still Arafura Resources, Arafura Rare Earths continue to move towards FID at Nolans. They've now got all of their debt funding secured. They've got $200 million investment from the National Reconstruction Fund. They're working at locking in their final offtake agreements and that final equity funding to get to that FID, which we very much hope will be in 2025, and that's going to be a massive development for Central Australia and one that we really look forward to. There was probably less of the greenfields rare earths exploration going on in 2024, given the depressed rare earth prices, but there is still a lot of interest in some of the superficial clay-hosted rare earth prospects, particularly out around the Aileron province, just north of the Nalia Basin, where companies like GSW Resources, URO Corporation, and Energy Metals have been proving the existence of some fairly prospective clay-hosted rare earths. Phosphates, both Avenira and Verdant have been quite active in the last year in progressing towards um, um, getting phosphate production up in the Northern Territory, and Avenira planning a direct shipping or phosphate mine potentially as early as the second half of this year, and also scoping the potential for a yellow phosphorus plant at the mine site. And Verdant Minerals just got awarded their mining lease. In the next presentation, we'll be hearing from Richard Maddox from Kingsland Minerals on where they're at with the exciting Lalin graphite discovery, a discovery that was only made a couple of years ago and is now Australia's largest graphite deposit. And we're really pleased to see a strategic investment from Quinbrook Infrastructure Partners in Kingsland last year, which includes an offtake agreement for a potential graphite processing facility at Middle Arm. So on to the petroleum sector. The the graph for expenditure for petroleum is looking a bit different to the mineral exploration graph at the moment. It's heading in the opposite direction. It's going gangbusters at the moment. So last year there was $370 million in expenditure in the Northern Territory. That's combined onshore and offshore, and unfortunately we don't get the breakdown of that from the ABS. But a lot of that would have been associated with the major campaigns going on in the Beetaloo as well as in the Amadeus Basin. During the year, the NT government signed gas sales agreements with Empire Energy and Tamboran Resources. There were 3 new horizontal wells drilled in the Beetaloo as the basin continues to be appraised and move towards pilot production. There were 2 new production wells drilled in the Amadeus Basin, and 2 more are planned in the Mereenie field. And also, Echelon Resources purchased EP145 in the Amadeus Basin, and it's great to see Echelon getting really involved and enthusiastic in exploration in the Amadeus Basin, not just in their joint venture with Central Petroleum, but also in their own right. And there is a Energy Club event on tomorrow afternoon where Echelon will be talking, and they've got an interesting story to tell. So there's a lot happening in the gas sector at the moment, and Tamboran, in joint venture with Falcon Oil and Gas and Daly Waters Energy, early last year, they announced how flow testing at the Shenandoah South 1H well had demonstrated productivity and decline profiles that are in line with what you'd expect to see in the best areas of the Marcellus Shale in the US. So just demonstrating the potential of the Beetaloo to be a major shale gas basin. Since then, they've drilled 2 more deep horizontal wells, both to well over 6,000 meters. That's about 3,000 horizontal and 3,000 vertical. They've stimulated one. They're still working on Shenandoah South 3H, but they're also demonstrating they can do these really long holes within, in the case of Shenandoah South 3H, within 25 days. So they're progressing a pilot plant in the Shenandoah South region, they're progressing their pilot project and targeting first production in 2026. And Empire drilled the Carpentaria 5H well, and that'll be stimulated in 2025. But they're also looking at moving towards pilot production with construction of a gas plant, which they've already purchased, and tying in their wells as early as the latter part of this year, or if not into next year. So it's a very exciting time for the Beetaloo, where it really is moving from appraisal in towards pilot production, and this will be massive for the Northern Territory. So I've just about done with my time. I guess, I think there's a lot of reason to be really optimistic about the year ahead. I think we've got a really strong outlook for gold, copper, uranium, and they're our historic strengths. And I think the restart of mining at Tennant Creek is going to be massive for the Territory, and hopefully, over the next 5 years, we'll see a lot of new gold mines starting up here in the NT. And it's also really good, like the Territory, I think, is second only to South Australia in terms of the percentage of our exploration, which is in greenfields areas. People are getting out and testing greenfields areas across the Territory. And as you'll hear over the next few days, it's fantastic potential here in the NT. Gas exploration is booming, and there's such an imperative to get gas out of the Northern Territory to support energy security for not just for the NT but Eastern Australia. And I guess NTGS is really keep working to do what we can to support the sector. We're now part of a dedicated Department of Mining and Energy with Alistair as CE, with a real mandate for industry development, and we're really looking forward to supporting the industry over the next year. So I think with that, I'll just say thank you to our sponsors,